Welcome to another DJI Enterprise webinar. Today, we're gonna have many guests today and just talk about some interesting application with our DJI Zenmuse L3 aerial LiDAR system. And today with me, we have Diego as well as Edwin from DEL, and we have Garrett from Drones Plus, and we have Dr. Hansen. Thank you all for joining into today's webinar. It's going to be a long webinar. So with that being said, let's get started. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please feel free to share in the question section. And toward the end of today's webinar, we're going to answer your questions. Later on, you're going to find this video record on YouTube channel of ours. It's called a DJI Academy. So make sure to get on YouTube and subscribe DJI Academy channel. All right. With that being said, I'm gonna leave to our audiences and have Diego present the case study with the DEL team. And Diego.
Thank you, Ron. So welcome everybody. We'll be speaking today in this webinar about Zenmuse L3 case study based in El Mirador jungle. This is placed in Guatemalan jungle in Petén, in the northern part of it. With us is Dr. Richard Hansen, who has spent over 40 years to this project, who's going to give us a lot of context and a lot of valuable information regarding how technology nowadays has contributed to these kind of expeditions, these kind of projects, and how we have been moving forward ever since the first case study that we did with the Zenmuse L1, all the way to now present day, where we did recently on December, a case study with the L3, mapping out unexplored sites, and you're gonna love it. So stick in. So first of all, I would like Dr. Hansen to introduce himself and give everybody a little bit of context of what this project is about and how LiDAR has impacted and changed throughout these years, every single discovery and all the documentation process. So Dr. Hansen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Richard Hansen. As Diego said, I've been working 46 years in the jungles of northern Guatemala, exploring 56 ancient cities. With the LiDAR, we've now identified 964 ancient sites that form 417 ancient cities, towns, and villages in this basin. And with the new technology that DJI is providing with Diego and Edwin, it gives us a tremendous opportunity to know and understand even more about the complexities of this society, about the social, political, and economic organization of this society. And it's visible with LiDAR now that we never had that opportunity before. As a result, it's been a fabulous new expose into the cultures that we have never really understood well before. The other thing that I'll point out in my presentation a little later is the incredible antiquity of these sites. These cities are 1,000 to 2,000 years older than all of the other sites that you see in Mexico or Belize or Guatemala, Honduras, or El Salvador. The fact that they're so early gives us a new window also into the formation of social, economic, and political complexity. And it lets us understand the rise of Mayan civilization as looked at from the cradle of Mayan civilization.
Thank you, Dr. Hansen, for that brief introduction. So moving on, basically, this is the whole team that we've been working on these case studies. People have been coming up with us, apporting to it. First of all, you heard Dr. Richard Hansen. He's the Forest Foundation project director. He's the main lead director of the project in the Mirador Basin. Then there's Garrett Garland. He's with Drone Plus Robotics. He has been helping us ever since the very first start. He helps us out with logistics, equipment, and everything we need in order to proceed and execute these kind of field missions. Then there's Edwin Escobar. He is the CEO and founder of DEL. And there's myself, who's Diego, and I am a technician, UAV specialist and surveyor here in DEL. So basically, what do we do right now in Guatemala as a DEL? Well, we're a region company based in Guatemala. We dedicate with precision surveying with technology. This goes a whole span from construction to surveying to real estate, power line pressures, agriculture, archaeology, cadastral maps. We basically just do integrations of technology in order to solve problems. As well, Drones Plus, established in 2015. They're based in Dallas. They also are part of the commercial drone industry and, well, right now, robotics, based in specialized in construction, survey, energy, and public safety, as well as a DJI enterprise partner, a gold dealer, and a certified representation. Okay, so I would like to go back with Dr. Hansen a little bit, explain us a little bit more about the context of what we're working on. As you can see, the El Mirador Karst Basin is located in the northern part of Guatemala, and here you can see a small GIF, small video showing what it really is about. All you can see is just canopy and dense jungle, and well, if you saw on the video on the right, you can see that little smoke on top. That means that's a pyramid. That's actually Danta coming in all the way to this remote place. So, Dr. Hansen, if you would go a little bit further into this.
Okay, yeah, I have a PowerPoint that we can bring up just a little bit that will explain this context a little better. But what we're looking at here is 2,200 square kilometers of terrain that we've now mapped with LiDAR. And thanks to the technology that Edwin and Diego are employing now, we're able to fill in some of the gaps and refine some of the earlier LiDAR maps that we did because it has a much greater resolution. So as a result, we're able to get even a better perspective of these ancient cities. We have 100% of every single platform, every single pyramid, every single canal, every single causeway we now have record of, and we have the documentation for, which then gives us a whole new perspectives on what kinds of scientific questions to ask, where we excavate and why. These are all opening up. For example, if you look on the image that Diego has up here, you see the consistent pattern on the right side of a format we call the E group structures, which is actually the earliest ritual and ceremonial architecture in Mesoamerica. We find no evidence of anything earlier than this that's so consistent. And you see the same elongated platform on the east, the big four-sided pyramids on the west, and that's the primary emphasis of these E groups. They are sometimes related and often linked to the equinoxes and the solstices. We have evidence of that in other sites, but in some areas it appears to be purely symbolic as well. So it's not entirely reliable to rely on these E group complexes for the equinoxes and solstices. But the pattern is what's consistent, and it shows this incredible, huge effort by the ancient Maya to develop this type of ritual architecture that we can see in many places of the world.
Sounds great. Sounds great, Doctor. And I do know that you have some slides to share with our audience. Do you mind share them like right
Let's
now?
do that now. That way we can set the foundation for what Diego and Edwin are going to be talking about. And Garrett, I'm sure, going to be able to throw something into this too. LiDAR and the Maya, new technology and insights in the Mirador Karst Basin system. This is what I want to discuss, and this is what Edwin and Diego and DJI have been exploring in the last 3 years. We've been working in this area and Garrett was even made it in there, believe it or not, to explore these ancient cities that are concentrated in this region. To understand this, you have to understand the chronology just briefly. And that is 98% of all the sites that you see in Mexico or Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, or El Salvador are either classic period or post-classic period, from 300 AD to 900 AD for the classic period, and from 900 to 1511 in the post-classic period. But the pre-classic, only 2% of all the sites that you see are date to the pre-classic periods. And yet we have this basin has this concentration of these sites. When we look at the very earliest sites in all of Mesoamerica, you see very early cities here on the northern side of on the Gulf Coast region, the Olmec sites. You see some extremely early sites on the Pacific coast of Guatemala and Chiapas. and you see this nest of very early cities in northern Guatemala and southern Campeche, Mexico, extreme northern section. It's actually an interesting area because it has a unique physiological and geographical and geological features. For example, in this satellite image that was published in National Geographic in November of 1992, you can see the types of vegetation in this infrared image. You see, for example, in the upper left side, the deforestation of Mexico. The red that you see was high tropical forest, but that heart-shaped patch in the middle of green is another type of vegetation. It's more swampy, swamp type of vegetation, and it shows up different on the LiDAR images. And you see it no matter what infrared image you want to use from any satellite in the world, it will show the same pattern. That heart-shaped feature of that blue in the middle, surrounded by a karstic ridge that completely surrounds it. It's like this. You see those two yellow lines form the perimeter, the ridge of mountains that they're only 200 to 300 meters high, but they form a barrier that completely surrounds this system. As a result, not one person lives in that. This has kind of served as a barrier. We also know that it served as an ancient cultural border. And the sites that you see there, the gold sites that are the little pyramids of little triangles of gold, are cities like Tikal or larger. The ones that are brown are smaller than Tikal. Now, this was a map that we did in 2011. This is the map as of yesterday, so to speak, with all of the ancient cities concentrated in this basin. In reality, it's the greatest concentration of ancient cities in the world. We have no other place in the world with the concentration and density of sites that are found in this area. To the lower left, there are no sites. To the lower right, there are very few, but look at the concentration of ancient cities in this area. We published a paper on this in Cambridge University, a LiDAR analyses in the contiguous Mirador Karst Basin. And fortunately, this was in 2022. Look at it, the number one of all the publications from ancient Mesoamerica, number one from all the publications from Cambridge University, and a rating of 969. Most of them range between 5 and 25. This is fortunate that there's that much interest in this kind of a subject. There's that kind of interest in LiDAR. There's that kind of interest in Guatemala. And there's kind of that kind of interest in the ancient Maya. So because of those interests, it has a huge reading and a huge capability. We're also 16 million of 26 million scientific publications on any subject, or 16,000, 16,628 of the 26 million publications ever published on any subject. So it's fortunate to show that kind of interest. These ancient sites are concentrated in this basin, and they're huge, massive ancient cities. These cities are with large pyramids. They were painted red originally. They're joined by causeways. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Huge plazas that captured water. And of course, this is the last tropical forest left in all of Central America. There is no more. It's massive deforestation. I'll talk about that in just a minute too. But we know from the scientific data, from the archaeological data, that the occupation begins as early as 2600 BC, but they're planting corn at this time period, but they're not building buildings. By 1000 BC, they are building platforms and permanent buildings, sedentary societies, and they're producing this kind of art. You see the type of the figurines that are here. These are the portraits of these individuals, the portraits of these people at 1000 BC. And of course, at the same time, while the Maya, you see in the upper image, there is a portrait of a Maya figure. We're coeval with the Olmec of the Gulf Coast. There's an Olmec plaque that we found at Mirador showing the interaction between these two cultures. They were contemporaneous, and the Olmec are not necessarily the mother culture anymore. They're the sister culture, because we have evidence of massive population growth and development in the Mirador Basin at the same time. Now, why were they there? Well, as we fly out over the basin as the jungle, and this is one of the values of the LiDAR technology too, it lets us see the terrain and these wetland marshes, they're still fossil remnants of the ancient system that existed out there. And these grassland marshes, they're swampy, they're full of crocodiles, they are full of snakes. They are, but the ancient Maya wanted to be in that area for the harvest of mud. And you can see the blue there are all these Bajo systems where these wetland marshes existed. And you can see the concentration of swamps that are there. And that's what essentially brought the Maya there in the first place. What allowed them to build these huge, massive ancient cities was the agricultural capability that these areas gave them. Then they linked all these cities together in a massive system of causeways. And you can see that the agricultural systems on both sides of this image as they're moving corn, beans, squash, and chocolate on these causeways. These ancient highways are actually the first superhighway system in the world. We have these causeways that are 2 to 5 meters high and up to 40 meters wide. You can see in the bottom picture there all these workmen standing on the causeway all the way across to the other side. That's a 40-meter wide causeway that shows that. And there you see him standing on the edge of the causeway. It goes over 40 meters and drops back down on the other side. So they're elevated superhighways that gave link to all these cities. Here you see, for example, the ancient city of El Mirador and the causeways alone that come out of this city that are found in this area. These are incredible highway systems, and they were constructed by about 500 BC. With LiDAR, well, they stick out like a sore thumb. You can see these ancient causeways and see these highways that link all these cities and sites together. And it gives us a tremendous advantage to understand the economic formation. Here you have a LiDAR map. You can see all the white lines are these super highways. There's 177 kilometers of these super highways that link these cities together in what we call a dendritic system, meaning tree-like. They have branches from major sites. They branch out to other cities so that it joins them together in the economic and political system that's there. And that's what allowed them to have this huge, huge development. Now that's the context of this. We knew there were ancient cities all over the basin, and we first began work with an airplane and a Regal LiDAR system that that had dual laser and allowed us to fly over these areas with the shooting about 600,000 points per second. That allowed us the village of this. Now we have gone now to the mapping with the drone with the Dell company in Guatemala, using these sophisticated DJI drones that now allowed us to fly slower, fly lower, and get a much higher resolution. Instead of 2 to 5 points per square meter, we're now able to get up to 30 points a square meter, which gives us a definition that we've never, ever been able to acknowledge or realize before. So there's 2,100, actually we have now, because of Dell, we now have about 2,200 square kilometers of contiguous mapping of this basin that lets us see this whole system. And when you look at also the advantage of the drone LiDAR with DJI is it lets us map these buildings and these cities in conjunction with their geological terrain. This is a map we published in +1 a couple of years ago, showing the actual borders of the basin, the actual system itself as identified by LiDAR. And the water stagnates in this area. Why? Because it stagnates there is what creates these swamps, and that's what drew the Maya there in the first place. When we fly over the basin, it looks like this. It's a dense canopy of green. These are trees 30 to 40 meters high that are completely covering these ancient cities. But when we know that they're there, we know now because of the LiDAR, the tremendous concentration of ancient cities in this basin. And when you look at it with the LiDAR perspective, instead of seeing jungle like you saw just a minute ago, you're looking at this. This is one of the ancient cities of the 417 that we now have identified in the basin. Not only do we find these cities, but we find these huge causeway systems that link them together, as I mentioned before, These ancient cities are concentrated in this area. We can look at specific buildings such as the massive pyramid of Danta, which is the tallest pyramid in the Americas. We can also use different light, the hillshade series, which gives even more definition because you can alter the sunlight to give us relief that we never able to observe before. And we use the drone system now to identify the terrace systems, the agricultural terraces. Here, for example, you see all these terraces. There's 2 kilometers of terraces here with imported mud from the swamps that they were doing. Look at the terrace system here. All these lines that you see here on these slopes are terraces, agricultural terraces that gave them high agricultural productivity. And you can see that huge causeway, by the way, that runs right into the area, which would allow the transport of products from these terraces to the big cities. With Dell mapping, we've now mapped cities that we've never known before or unable to identify before. We mapped recently the site of Noholtun, which is fascinating because it's a big site. It's a big site, but they have a curious phenomenon up here with this E group that we talked about a minute ago with the big building on the east. So they built that one first, but the collapse occurred in the basin. The demographic collapse occurred in the basin before they were able to build the big building on the west. It's interesting to see what they built first, the patterns that they built first. We're also working with Dell with a new city called Chicaticanal, which was found actually by Dell mapping. And the problem though that we find here is that there's a fascinating causeway that comes up through the middle of the city, and it continues right. It keeps right on going up into the north here. So it's one of these cities that's linked to the basin, and these are the massive ancient cities, the largest ancient cities that are all connected to Mirador. These are the native giants of the Calakmul Mirador karst basin system, an early Maya state. And you can see the number of cities here that are enormous. These are all sites that are larger than Tikal in many ways. In fact, when we compare Tikal and Mirador at the same scale, for example, the black images that you see here are the images of Tikal, which by far is a fascinating and one of the major ancient centers of the classic period. Here, for example, is Temple 1 and Temple 2 and Temple 3 and Temple 4 of Tikal. But when you place it at the same scale in a site like Mirador, which is 1,000 to 2,000 years older than Tikal, the entire civic center of Tikal sits inside a small part of the western group of Mirador. And there's still 132 square kilometers of monumental architecture in this city we have yet to define. The problem is that we're losing the opportunity to save this system. All the red dots that you see now are cattle pastures, massive deforestation. This is an image as of 2022. Every red dot and every orange dot that you see there is massive deforestation. And the basin is the last bastion of tropical forest left in Guatemala. These are the fires on one day of May 15th, 2024. And you can see the edge of the basin is right through here. You can see this is the last chance we have to save these areas by using these ancient cities as the models for rainforest conservation, saving these sites because we can economically justify the conservation of these ancient cities. Thank you, DJI, and thank you, Dell, for making the LiDAR data available so that we have a new weapon in our battle to save and protect this forest and save and protect these large and massive ancient cities that gave us a clue to the rise of political complexity in the New World. Not only that, but it's a model for all civilizations and all governments of the world, because it shows you the origins of their sophistication. It shows you the dynamics of that sophistication and how they can maintain those complex societies, and it can show us what they did wrong that caused a complete and utter demographic collapse and an abandonment of these areas, of these huge ancient cities in history. With that, then you can see now the background and the context of what Diego and Edwin are going to be talking about when we talk about the LiDAR technology and how that applies to our understanding of humanity.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Dr. Hansen.
So now the big challenge is that all this is under thick canopy of dense jungle, and getting there is not easy. And Diego's going to share a bit about that experience as well, and all of our adventures into the jungle. Thanks to Richard's support and Drone Plus, Garrett, and the whole team from Drone Plus and DJI, providing all this equipment to make it available to us, being able to try out all the equipment before it comes out to market, and putting it through harsh conditions and taking it to the limit. Because I believe that if you can solve projects like El Mirador, you can solve them anywhere in the world. These are probably the harshest places to work at.
Yes, they are. Thank you, Edwin, and thank you, Richard, for your context and the background of the project. Having said so, now you can understand what it really means and implies just getting into the site, not let alone getting where you're gonna start mapping from, where you're gonna take off and land, where you're gonna position your antenna, how you're gonna move not only the drone but the battery case as well, also the camera cases, and all of these logistics plannings. That's really heavy. Where Garrett is gonna share about what this means. What does it mean? Just getting the equipment not only to the jungle, but getting into Guatemala, moving it into where we're gonna start going from, then scouting, all the scouting process of finding out a cibalito, a clearing, an opening, or even just getting on top of a pyramid, which is basically just the easiest solution. It's not always the most optimal for where we're mapping, especially the unexplored areas that Richard was just talking to us about. So, Garrett, could you explain and tell us a little bit more about your experience with this kind of projects? You've been with us ever since the first L1 mapping mission that we did, where we actually had to go on top of these water systems, getting on top of some places that just you have to climb to get on top of them. So
yeah,
give us a little
absolutely,
bit more
absolutely. Yes, and to follow up on Richard, it's tough. He gave a great explanation. Obviously, he's been doing this for his entire professional career, and wow, there is a lot to cover. Getting into the logistics, just getting the equipment into Guatemala is a challenge in itself, let alone getting it into the jungle. And so much to cover, but yes, again, thanks Diego, thanks Richard, and again, thanks Edwin for the opportunity to present and be able to be a part of this incredible project. It's blown my mind every step of the way. And to your point, Diego, DJI has given us the privilege of testing their newer LiDAR scanners before they hit the market, to test in these demanding environments. And I've flown in many places across the world with many different drones, and time again, I stay up at night thinking about how difficult it is to put together the project, let alone actually execute on it. So just everything coming together as one, getting the helicopter weights correct, because there's only really two ways to get out there, and that's either you walk out there, and that's a 2 to 3 day hike one way with mules, because with all this equipment, you're obviously going to need some help. You can't just carry that in, but getting that in, you either take a mule or you take a helicopter, which is what we do. And that is an absolute nightmare. planning how many pounds, how many kilograms can I take per trip back into the jungle. And typically it's a couple trips. It's expensive. It's a logistical nightmare getting back there into the jungle with the equipment. But once we get it in there, there's really no other piece of equipment that I would even try to bring into the jungle other than whatever DJI has produced on the enterprise side. I mean, especially with the 400. From the 350, we've done multiple missions into the jungle with the 300, and then the 350 came out, and then now we've got the 400, and we've seen the evolution from the beginning to now where we're at. And it almost makes you wonder how we were even doing it with the older models, because this 400 has now made our lives so much easier when we actually do get the equipment and ourselves in position to start capturing data. And to kind of expand on that, it's always ever changing out there in the jungle. You're never gonna have one day that looks like yesterday. Every day is different. Weather is a huge thing out there. Depends on the time of year. But even the four-wheelers. So once you do get out on camp, there is a heliport that is near this great camp that Richard has set up over the last 40 years. And it's a beautiful camp. And sometimes things go wrong and you have a four-wheeler that has broken down, has a broken axle, has a flat tire, and you have to now, instead of having the luxury of taking the four-wheeler out, loading up the drones and going out to where you're going to be flying to, now we are loading up and we are carrying this equipment, batteries, battery stations, drones, cameras, and lunch, you name it, everything that's going to supply us on our daily data capture is now we're hiking in 2 hours one way over. And it's not just a flat road. I mean, you're in the jungle. And you're fighting bugs, you're fighting humidity, sweat. Oh, man, it's brutal. And I will say, Diego, he is a trooper. He puts his head down. He'll load up all of the equipment. He'll be loaded, something on his back in both hands, and always has a smile on his face. So that's pretty awesome as a motivator, because it can be a little challenging to the four-wheeler broke down, now we're just going to have to walk over to the site with all the equipment. It's a hit to morale, but when you have amazing guys around you that we're just going to get it done with a smile on our face, it's a pretty cool experience. Always surrounded by good guys. And then I mean, just really emphasizing that here at Drones Plus, we do sell a couple different brands of drones, and there is not a single other brand that I would recommend even coming close to approaching something like this than DJI. DJI is the only solution, and I don't say that lightly. So, again, can't thank you guys enough for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this truly incredible project. And that's really all I have to share. I'll let you all take it back.
Thank you, Garrett. Having said so, now you can understand a little bit more what challenges come with the mappings and just getting into these kind of projects, which are huge. So now, speaking a little bit more technical side, right? So there's 3 scenarios that we have tested so far. Well, there's one yet to be tested. However, there's 3 ways that we have managed throughout the years to solve the problem of where we're going to fly from and how we're going to do it. So we've done the first scenario. It's on top of a pyramid. It's the easiest because you're on top of of the structure. You're above the canopy, so the signal strength is just, you never lose signal strength as long as you have the RTK antenna on top of it. and you're on top of it as an operator. So that's the most efficient way of mapping out in this kind of environments. There's the second scenario, which we have done and we have been doing, especially with the unexplored sites, which is just find an opening, find a clearing, and just flying off the drone. I don't know how many kilometers, as long as you have signal strength. Sometimes it may vary. However, this is not the optimal because you're wasting a lot of resources. You're wasting battery time, battery efficiency, efficient mapping time on top of it. And well, there's always the uncertainty of being so far away from where the drone is that the ever-changing environment might become an obstacle. Has happened before in July, where we went with the L2 with a brand new M400, and we have a wind situation, and the drone was 9 kilometers off and just didn't make it back. It was 1.5 kilometers from where we were. And you know, you don't want to hike at 4 p.m. in the middle of the jungle where you have no signal reception, and you just have to go with your controller, finding out where was the last place the drone was at, with a forest keeper who was with us, and just hiked your way through the jungle until we found the drone laying on top of a tree. So these are the challenges that come across.
And then fighting it with the monkeys.
Yeah, so we were getting the drone down. There were some monkeys throwing some green nuts, seeds at us. They were hitting the ground real far, really strong, because we were really deep in the middle of the jungle, far off from where we were taking off, right? And the third scenario that I want to show you is with an Azimuth 0 antenna. Nowadays, and back in the day when we were doing the project, was still being developed a tether and a tether format or tether solution and a relay that we could work upon these conditions. Having said so, the easiest way to solve this kind of scenario is just having another drone which can give continuously RTK and signal transmission signal to the drone that's mapping 10, 11 kilometers off. However, you're still down in the ground level, so you can actually know what's going on with the drone, what's being mapped, does it still have signal strength, and you can control different environment conditions like wind speed. If it's going against us, for example, we know it's going to take a bit more of a load on the battery consumption coming back. So these are the kind of solutions that we've been working on and proposing, and well, actually fortunate enough to see them being developed. So we're really excited to try out this third scenario, as long as it's a finished product, to try it out in the hardest environments of the jungle. Okay, so as we have said, we have tested from the L1 all the way to the L3 throughout this project. Here you can see a quick comparison table of the results, mainly the ground point density per square meters. Here it is important to say that back in 2015 and 2018, when Dr. Hansen did the first LiDAR scanning of most of the area that he showed you, he was getting a penetration of 2 to 5 ground points per square meter. And with that resolution output, they managed to create these beautiful DEMs models and hill shape models that Dr. Hansen just showed you at the beginning of the presentation. Nowadays, we're averaging 30, 19 ground points per square meter. And what does that mean? How does that translate into these hill shape filters that Dr. Hansen was talking about? Well, you can see right here on the right, a difference between the very first flights we did with the L1, where you can see all the noise being produced by the trying to filter out which was a ground point and which was not. And on top of it, you can see a brand new L3 DEM model. This is part of an unexplored site, which Dr. Hansen just talked about, which is called Ticanal, which is part of the latest expeditions we have gone through. So what's the big difference between the L2 and the L3? Well, of course, more points, more returns means more ground points, therefore means smoother DEMs or ground point control point models, ground point models, I mean. So here we can see a quick comparison of just a filter out in Terra of the classification points. And well, you can maybe not see in the first hand that much of a difference. You can see a couple gaps there in top of the L2, and here down in the L3, you can see them even more filled out. It all depends, you know, the density, height, overlap that you're planning. And of course, scanning mode is part of a variable now that we can play around. However, if you can see a cross section with the same profile width, you can see that the L2 has more gaps in between those ground control points filtered out versus the L3 that you can see almost a continuous line meaning the profile of the ground that we're mapping, right? So how does this translate into these hill-shaped models or these hill-shaped filters? Well, you can see here an example of an L2, and on the very next slide, I'll show you a comparison with all the LiDAR sensors of the Great Acropolis. So this is basically the heart of the Mirador Basin. This is the causeway that leads to Danta, of course. And here you can see a 3D model of the Danta pyramid that we did with the L3. So how do this translate into a hill-shape or a DEM model? Both are really smooth. Both results are great, work wonders. The first site that we explored and uncovered with Dr. Hansen with the L2, which is called Noholtun, which is in the southern part of the basin, is what we're seeing here on the right, I mean. And on the left, we can see, well, this brand new site that Dr. Hansen was talking about that we went on December with the new results. Major difference, well, the filtering model, the noise that it produces might differ. However, you can see with this filter how the structures contrast with the lightning. And this is what allows us to give to the archaeologists so they can start documenting and coming up with conclusions of which kind of group this is this a structure, is this a complex, and all the valuable data that they would need in order to, well, start with the research. How do we see this compared with the other two sensors? Well, you can see the heel shape right here on the left of the L1. You see all these little bumps and smolders. These are noise from the filtering out, right? So you can see as the model becomes more recent or it's more powerful, then you can see how every time there's less and less noise to be filtered out, right? So filtering out is a huge job and a huge work to be done with these models. However, in these fast exercises, especially being on site, we just want to see results and how clearly we can see them, right? Before just returning from the jungle. Because in that case, we can adapt, we can remap something, we can play with variables, and we can start, well, finishing the puzzle that it's basically the whole area of the basin. So how does this compare to what Dr. Hansen has from 2015 and 2018? Well, here's an example of the same scale factor, give or take, about the 50-meter length. And you can see, well, on the noise and on the gain of the resolution, basically, of all this filtering process. So now the technologies allows us to process faster with better quality and still being reliable and accurate data.
And from the practical standpoint, just understanding how Richard's project 2015, 2018 took a multi-million-dollar airplane and technology back then, multi-million-dollar endeavor to map out all this area has become something more accessible with drone technology. When we started with the L1, we were using 5 drones, 5 M300s with 5 L1s. And we would lift them off and send them over to 5 sectors at the same time. And we'd be mapping over 20 square miles a day. And that was a big task. Very hard generators. We were using 16 batteries, 2 chargers per drone because of the humidity and the heat and all the logistics about food and gasoline for the generators and being out there in the jungle in a team and moving up every so often. It took us a week to scan. And the second mission was made with 2 L2s and 2 350s. And it was just as efficient with less drones and a better technology. But now we're doing the same just with 1 M400 and 1 L3 camera. You can go faster now, higher, and you can have a better overlap, higher definition. You got more millions of points per second and more rebounds. And this has made it so much easier to work. Even the battery system, just using one battery case with 3 batteries and a generator, a very small generator, makes it so easy for us to go back and fix anything we need to fix. Richard's work took years for it to be processed, months before he could see anything. For us, with the M300 and the L1, it took us a few days after we left the mission. And sometimes we would have to go back again and get it fixed, something that was not scanned properly. But what was great with the L3 and the M400 and the new Terra versions and the other softwares we were using is that we were able to get the hillshades within hours from the mission being made in sight. You know, we had a server on camp. You know, we were connected to Elon's satellite system, and it was just working perfect. It is amazing how this technology has allowed us not only hardware but also software to process things on time, on site, and it makes a great difference. And not just on the horizontal perspective, but also in the vertical. You know, we've been able to map faces, walls, for things that archaeologists have taken them years to map out and design in paper. Now we can scan it with a LiDAR, not just horizontal, but also vertical. So we're happy that we've been exploring and finding, getting new discoveries with Richard Hansen, publications that will soon come out to the public, where we've found new cities that were not charted before, they were not documented, and how these cities are connected. So, and also we have to say that it was incredible how DJI was going very fast in innovation. We would go to one mission with the M300s and the L1s, and we'd come back with all the insights about all the troubleshooting of getting this work done out there in the jungle. And then the next version, the L2 and the M350, had all these new innovations that were solving those issues. And when we came with the L3 and the M400, most of these issues were totally solved. And now we're really excited about trying out the relay and the tether solution, where we have one of the enterprise drones go up and be that the relay up there above the canopy, flying as far as we can, so we can avoid all those troubleshoots about weather, changing winds, rain, and things that just happen within minutes, and then it changes the whole mission. So yeah, we're very thankful DJI's research and development. It's been just incredible how they quickly adapted to new solutions that have come out to market, and some of them we know have been because of what we've been trying out in the jungle at El Mirador.
Yes, exactly. Moving on, what we're looking at screen is the final result of ever since June that we did the first expedition with the 400, and well, in December we complemented it with the L3. So this is part, just not the whole part of it, not the whole map of it, of what we were actually mapping out. So this picture has a mix between L2s on the edges, and on the very middle of it, it's just pure L3 data. And from here, we can see every single detail, from looting trenches to possible causeways that Dr. Hansen was talking about. A couple of, well, they're not really streets, but there are some clearings that people make in trying to get to looting camps or loot these pyramids. You can see looting trenches. I did say that. You can see a little bit of these houses that were built on this site right here, and just by the form of it, you can start getting conclusions whether it was a pre-classic, early pre-classic, or middle pre-classic, or late pre-classic on top of it. You can start looking at complexes, not only just small walls, but also structures that start coming together into forming either complexes or groups. So terraces also come up, as Dr. Hansen said on the first slider, that you can see all the harvesting terraces that Mayans used to do back in the day. So having this technology, it's accurate processing and fast data processing end to end, helps us to be able to show these maps in high resolution, in high quality, and fast, so archaeologists can actually go through them and start with their respective, studies on top of them. Okay, moving on. Here's a picture of DJI Terra's 3D model of the Danta on top of the pyramid, and here you can see it filtered out. You may see a lot of gaps. Just keep in mind and remember the huge height difference there is between the ground level and Danta. Plus, well, also these servings that we did specifically on Danta were with different height parameters, a little bit higher than we usually fly to, because we were testing out different heights, different overlaps, different speeds, just to see the quality between a regular L2 and, well, an optimized L3, which allows you to save not only resources but time. Having a drone that has more air time, more mapping time, higher sensor, more points per square meter allows us to reduce, as Edwin said, from 5 drones with 5 sensors or cameras all the way to just 1 camera, 1 drone, and 1 battery case, which is, well, basically in this kind of scenario, the battery cases, reducing them is the most beneficial variable that we can play with, because as you may all know, those battery cases are heavy and, weight distribution with helicopters really add up real fast. So part of the value that we can add to having these maps and all of the other maps here using the same Danta example is being able to just draw profiles. Any technician, any archaeologist just has to download Terra, can import the maps, and can just start studying heights with profiles. They can filter out the models, and they don't have to have the whole technical expertise of the software being used to be able to consult or look at or go through the models, rather than just downloading a simple Terra and importing the zip files. Okay, moving on. I would like to talk about a little bit more of the logistics. We've talked about a lot about finding openings, being on top of pyramids, but what does this really look like? Here on the right, on the top of the right, you can see a loop of video of the clearing that we had to do with machetes and forest guards. They had to clear up this, it's called Cibalito, which is a really small swamp that during winter, when it rains, well, it fills up, and that's where animals go to drink water from. Or during summer, they actually dry out and become a little bit lower. However, the vegetation is still around, I don't know, maybe 2 meters high, 1.8 meters height. So we do have to make the clearing in order to make space, either for the drone, for the antenna, or just for the landing and takeoff side, as well as the example of what it's flying on top of a pyramid, which is of course the most practical way of surveying. However, it depends how close you are from the top of a structure to where you're actually trying to map out. So plus the big challenge of getting the drones and the cases on top of a pyramid, that's an experience of its own, to be fair. Okay, now I would like to give a little bit more context of these previous flyings and mappings that we have done. As I said at the start, whenever we first started off, we had to get on top of water towers just to get a little bit of signal. Luckily enough, we were close to a small settlement called Carmelitas, or a village actually, that had a little bit of infrastructure. So we were able to get away with it, at least on that side of the project. But what happens when you move north of it, when there's nothing but jungle in it, that's when you have to start making decisions. And, all the plannings, people who work in the project or have been working for years that know about the context of that, know where there's a little bit of a clearing or a little bit bumped where you can get just a little bit higher and just start gaining those extra meters with the connection. We've had to climb on top of trees to maintain signal strength. Just getting, as I said, getting the cases and the drones on top of a pyramid is also, well, a challenge on its own, let alone just being on top of it throughout the whole day, just getting sunburned, dehydrated. The humidity also kicks in. So it's a real experience on its own. So
and all the critters there are blood-sucking critters.
Yeah, let alone the bugs. If you're allergic to
mention the snakes. You have snakes out there too everywhere. So that was one of our big fears, is that our drone guys and our mapping guys are going to come across a snake as they're looking at their drone. They're not looking on the ground where those snakes are. So that was one of the concerns we had as well.
Exactly, and they're poisonous and venomous snakes, so they're a real hazard to oneself being up there. So you can understand how tall this and dense this canopy is. Here you can see a video that explains pretty much how it is throughout the entire basin. Even the roads, the dirt roads that connect people or people overall just do and start getting in, they're all close by. So there's a lot of planning that goes around, even just from the flying perspective to just the deployment of where we're gonna start from. And a really important thing to consider is the communication with the team, because you're not always going to be the one who's takes off the drone, brings it back, change the batteries, check on SDs. You need a group of people that are able to help you out, especially in these kind of scenarios where there's an operator on top of a pyramid just flying, taking off, landing, and making sure the drone the drone signal is okay. You have another team on a bottom platform, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 meters below your level, where they have the battery cases to help you out, change the batteries, reset the drone. You know, since you're on top, they bring you out more batteries for the antenna, more batteries for the controller, you know, food, water, and just having more people to help you out. So it's a huge, complex logistic-wise expedition. However, it has a great impact and return on every single one of us who are involved in this project. So having said this, I would like to thank Dr. Hansen, Edwin, Ron, Garrett, and everyone who connected and is interested in this subject to just keep on moving and show you a little bit of what's being done in Guatemala and how we can actually give to the project and different case uses and studies for the technology that DJI is coming up with.
Thank you, Diego, for sharing all these informations and your experience, Garrett, as well as letting us know the background and objectives we're trying to hit, Dr. Hansen, Edwin as well. So we have some questions collected from our audience, and I'd like to kind of go through these with this audience. And by the way, if you have any questions for our audience, please feel free to leave them in the question section, and we'll go through them. Some questions about the parameters for the M400 and L3, Diego, and I think Edwin kind of covered this earlier. I didn't want to interrupt, but I think a good point was selecting the right tool for the right task. It's all about trading off the equipment based on the cost and efficiency, right? You may have a great product or sensor that can collect a huge amount of data, but later on, how you're going to deal with this data, that's all the cost you have to kind of consider. Especially with the L3, because we now have the different settings, scanning patterns, flight height, altitude, returns, and pulse frequency. Just want to know from your experience, Diego, what would be the general settings you guys found more effective using the L3?
Definitely non-repetitive with the new scan modes help out a lot. We always try to keep our missions around the same height, same overlap, and same speed. However, we were previously flying at 150 AGL, probably 5 or 6 meters per second, 70-70. This time around, we tried out at 60-70 on the unexplored sites, and on Danta testings, we did 210, 280 with different overlap ratios just to get a little bit more of understanding of which cloud point density parameters work best for us. To be honest, in these kind of scenarios, especially on unexplored sites, we always try to keep it safe, quality-wise. So we keep flying around 150, 160 meters, at least 50 or 60 overlap, and especially the non-repetitive one that gives us a little bit more penetration will help out a lot, as well as a little bit faster. We're not flying at 5 meters per second anymore. We're doing 8 to 10, especially because we don't really want ortho, because it's just canopy. We just want the LiDAR information. So we can actually afford to fly a little bit faster even. But as I said, we always try to keep it safe just to minimize the amount of times that we might have to come back. It's not like we have to, but just in case. And yeah, I don't know.
And until the tether's out, you have to say, Diego, that you had missions where you had the drone go out autonomously and do the work by itself, and you had no contact with the drone 15 miles away. I mean, it's just something incredible with the M400 is that we would have the drone out for half an hour and not know what it was doing, way out. You know, there was no way for us to know if the drone was going to come back or not. And it was just a great relief every time you came back with the information, you know. So yeah, we played it safe, but we did have to risk our equipment many times, but the system is so robust that the drone was making it out well. The only big risk is when weather changes, wind changes and rain and whatever else, and then the drone has to figure it out on his own coming back, and you have all those conditions against it. But the drones are very robust, and this robotic ability of being autonomous is just incredible.
Can I make another point about what I see coming down in the future with these drones? And that is, these drones, for example, can determine different types of vegetation. This is hugely important to understand ancient impacts and how the vegetation responded to the ancient environmental impacts. We think that's going to be a factor that we can look at in the future. We also know that there's exotic minerals in the basin, rare earth minerals that are in the basin. And these types of drones can help us identify the chemical composition of soils down the line that will help us understand more about the rise of humanity and the rise of civilization in these areas. In the future, I see also these drones have the technology to penetrate the architecture and have subsurface radar of these buildings, which I think would be a huge a huge advantage scientifically to help us understand the composition of these buildings, the chronological sequence of architecture, and any cultural activity related to these buildings can be provided with that kind of technology. That's why we're so optimistic and so appreciative of DJI being able to work with Dell in this fashion to give them this kind of experimental approaches and the future approaches that we can use in the future that will make a huge difference in an understanding of civilizations.
Edward, I think you're muted.
Sorry, I said one night I took out the thermal camera, and it was just amazing to see the amount of energy that the pyramids accumulate throughout the day in the sun and how all they light up. I have my own theory. I'm still working it out with Richard, but it's incredible all the things we're finding with these drones. But the LiDAR has been the most amazing, just to be able to unveil what's under the jungle, which otherwise we can never see, and finding out new structures that weren't found before.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sharing all these valuable information. And moving forward, we will definitely love to work with DL as well as Drones Plus to kind of do more experiments further. More questions from our audience, more regarding to the operation. This might be more of a Garrett or Diego questions. It's about battery charging. I know we all know like Guatemala is a hot place. How do we have any issues with the humidity when it comes to charging the battery and the temperature?
I'll let Diego take this one.
Well, for the 350s and the 300s, it was a pain because the humidity and the warmth would just not let them cool down. We used to take the car when we were down closer to a village. In the car, we would just blast the AC on top and just put the batteries in just to cool them a little bit before charging them with a generator. Now with the 400, we're lucky enough. Well, thanks to DJI, not really lucky.
Even into coolers, we had them into coolers as well.
Yeah, and nowadays with the 400 batteries, you can just land the drone even with the same heat conditions. Just wait it out 10 minutes on the shade and just plug them into the battery case. One battery case, one generator, and we had continuous flight throughout the whole day. So there's no need of more battery cases for more batteries.
Yeah.
We have to start cycling them. Not anymore. So that's a huge advantage of the new drone. Well, the new 400. I don't know if you want to add anything up with that, Garrett, your experiences with the batteries.
No, that's a great point. I mean, I did notice when we were in the jungle on our previous expeditions, our TB60s and our TB65s were struggling heavy. Even in the shade, it would be 90 degrees outside, really not even too hot. And we would still struggle. We had brought out ice on the helicopter with coolers to try and cool the batteries off. Even that really barely worked. And then on our most recent trip out there with the 400, we didn't notice a single issue with charging batteries, overheating. We were, completely nonstop operations all day from when we got out on site to when we headed out right before sunset. No issues with, just one battery station and 3 batteries.
These are 8 12-hour day operations, just so we can scan hundreds of square kilometers. So, these they really, the equipment is really put out to the test, not just for an hour flight. I mean, this is 12-hour flying, nonstop.
Yeah, generally, for one operation or for one device, the battery chamber contains 3 batteries. So the charging sequence. So generally speaking, that is sufficient for the cycle to having the drone up in the air continuously. But yeah, well, very interesting scenario overall. Next question I have is similar. It's still on the operation side. It's about the ground sampling distance as well as how is that affecting the ground point density. I think this is more for Edwin and Diego. It's about, well, it seems like we're flying at a fixed altitude to collect these data. But is there like a lot of terrain changes on the site? Is that a challenge?
Well, we always fly with terrain follow. We pre-charge the missions either on camp if there's internet or right before riding the helicopter into the camp. So we pre-charge them and we do terrain follow because you don't know, you may come across I don't know, a bump that might influence in your data capture, even though you're flying 150, 160 meters from where you are at. We always just try to play it safe, especially with new equipment, especially when it's going 8 kilometers away from us. We don't always have signal reception. So yeah, terrain follow, we always play it safe with it, just to keep, the constant altitude, at least as close as it can get.
Most people might think that we have access to a GNSS network or technology, but we're hundreds of kilometers away from any known technology. So the drone is really out there on itself, connected with a satellite. So that's why we rather use the DRTK3, which is a great improvement over the DRTK2, making sure we have really precise information out there in the jungle, because once we're there, there's no way for us to connect to the internet or to connect to some other network. The drone has to be very precise on its own, and it's incredible the way it does it.
Thank you for that input. I'm seeing a comment or a question that is relative or relevant to our product. I'm probably just gonna highlight it real quick. It's about the noise gathering from the L3 based on the previous experience caused by the MTA, or if you're not familiar with what MTA is, it's multiple time around. It's a issue causing a noise, gathering noise points underneath the ground. So that was the case. We have released the Terra version 5.2 to optimize the MTA issue along with the firmware update for the L3. So if you have seen similar issues, please update. We have optimized the algorithm to remove those noise points. And we actually have settings inside our flight planning software. Let's say if you demand to fly at a relative high altitude, we'll have suggested sampling rate for you. In addition to that, I have also seen some audiences are kind of wondering if there is a BV loss waiver you have to apply for surveying this site, or is there like a government or regulatory challenges while perform surveying at this area. I guess this is more Edwin questions as well as.
Yes, this is a highly regarded and restricted area. You can only fly with government permits. And Dr. Richard's license to explore archaeological mission in this place allows us to work with them in this sense. There's sites like Tikal, which are prohibited to fly because they protect some red-crested falcon. We've gotten permits to fly there. We had this question on the previous Spanish webinar. We've had no issues with birds. These falcons, these rested falcons or the eagles, we have this huge, what's the name of the big eagle, Richard? I think you're muted.
The harpy eagle's the biggest, but you have the ornate hawk eagle too. Those big eagles would.
But they don't come close to the drones. The drones are big enough for them just to stay away. And usually the regulatory system is that they protect these birds, but the birds don't get close to these drones. Even though they're not as noisy as they used to be, they're not an issue with flora and fauna. But yeah, we have to get permits. And we usually also sometimes use UHF radios because we do report to the Civil Air Authority to make sure they report to all the helicopters or airplanes flying in the area to make sure that we're flying at a certain height, because we know that some helicopters don't respect their 500 feet above the ground. Sometimes they fly lower, and we want to avoid any accidents. So yeah, we're constantly reporting with authorities, and we do get all these permits. They're not easy to get, and it's a restricted area. Not everybody can take a drone here and fly. It's restricted by the Ministry of Culture and Archaeology.
That's right. And the Ministry of Culture, the Institute of Anthropology and History, and the Civil Aeronautics Patrol. We have permits from all those three. We secure those so that we can do this kind of research with Dell.
But then it's also great to see that the drone has the ability with ADBS to see that any aircraft that is close by, so we can take precautionary measures. I would imagine it would be difficult to get an ADBS out because it would be too much noise in air traffic. But yeah, these are things we're working on to make sure that we're flying safe out there because we're very far away.
I might also mention that Edwin pointed out the size of the drone. The size of these drones is impressive. They're large enough to carry enough battery and carry a large enough LiDAR system to make it effective. However, if they were smaller drones, I believe we would have problem with birds. Tikal, for example, the orange-breasted falcon is a very rare falcon that nests in Tikal, and we've had a couple of cases where they were actually killed by drones, attacking drones. They regarded those as, they're very aggressive falcon. They regarded these as intrusive intruders, and they attacked the drone and end up getting killed. So because of the size of these drones, there's little or no, there's no interference from the large raptors that reside in this area. And we're grateful for that. We want every bird to have that protection, and we also need to be able to procure the data that we need to analyze these complex cultures that were thriving in this area.
Well, thank you all for your insights, and we actually previously have worked on a video together just to showcase the application and the case study. I would like to present to you all right now. And let me share my screen and present the video.
My name is Richard Hansen, and I am the founder and the president of the Foundation for Anthropological Research and Environmental Studies. We have been working for 47 years in the Mirador Basin of northern Guatemala. The reason that this is an interesting area is because it contains the largest and earliest ancient Maya cities in an extraordinary concentration of sites. 964 sites that we have found so far, forming 417 ancient cities, towns, and villages. The importance of sites like El Mirador is that it's the largest one in the basin, and actually it looks like one of the largest ancient cities in the entire Western Hemisphere. And it helps us understand the origins, development, and collapse of complex societies and all the factors that led to that. We were the pioneers, for example, of total station technology in Guatemala, pioneers of LiDAR technology, and we had the cutting edge technology in 2015 and again in 2018 that allowed us to see the whole basin in a continuous manner that opened up our eyes to the social, economic, and economic complexity of this area. However, since then, the technology has grown exponentially. And with me is Dr. Edwin Escobar, who is bringing this new technology to let us know and understand even more about this area than we knew before.
It's been a privilege all these years to support your project, the Mirador Basin, and to bring other partners like DJI Enterprise with drones like the M300, the M350, now the M400. And we went from the L1 to the L2, now the L3. Now we're getting, the whole system itself is very robust. I mean, these are very harsh conditions for the other kind of drones. And you know, it's different from what you did in 2015, 2018 that you did with planes, that these airplanes were going faster and higher with less technology than today. But these drones are having better technology. They're flying slower and lower with the ability to get, like you said, you know, much more information. You can see the jaguars down there in the jungle.
Well, we know, and you, as you well know from personal experience, this is one of the most remote and difficult projects in the world. And the fact that we're 2 to 3 day hike from the nearest road. In reality, we'll never have to do maps again of this area because the precision and the accuracy of this material will make it so that these maps will be eternal. And that's one of the contributions that, Edwin, that we see coming from this kind of technology.
We're very thankful with DJI Enterprise and the platform, not just the hardware and the great sensors and drones, but also all the software improvements that we've been seeing in the last 5 years, how the ability to scan out there in the jungle and get this information processed quickly and get this really detailed information on the ground and sections, and the ability to see the pyramids with their staircases, and it's just incredible.
So the big advantage with the L3 coupled with the 400, especially relating to this project out here in the jungle, is going to be the Matrice 400 compared to the Matrice 350, where we were seeing about 6 to 7 kilometers max range. We're seeing about 12 kilometers scan range. So that almost doubles our radius to where we could fly from home. And then coupled with the L3, obviously the big one that stands out is the 16 returns versus 5 on the previous model, the L2. That jump is huge. That allows us to fly higher, faster, and with less overlap.
And I'm in charge of the processes, not only from the mission planning, but all the way to the deliverables, such as contour topographic maps, all the way to DEMs or hill shades, like in this example, inside the project. Basically, the end-to-end that DJI offers us helps us smooth the process, not only from the flying standpoint or the execution, but all the way to the processing. This allows us to filter out the point cloud with this new L3 LiDAR sensor with the 16 returns, which will give us smoother DEMs. This translates to even smoother and clearer hill shade filters that allows us and the archaeologists to notice if there's any causeway continuity, structure, or complex around the analyzed area. Once we're done executing the mission flight inside here in El Mirador, the next step is basically just processing this information. We're very aware that we have to filter out all the non-ground points in order to get the final results. In this case are the digital elevation models, or the DEMs, which we run through a hill shade filter. A hill shade filter basically what does is exaggerates the lightnings and contrasts the structures. So structures and monuments like cities, causeways, or actually just standalone structures will stand out in this filtering process. That is what we deliver to the archaeologists so they can even further either continue the exploration or actually map and know what's happening in the specific areas that are being analyzed. DJI software actually helps us a lot in order to clean out the point cloud generated by the LiDAR sensors. So this actually helps us to be faster in delivering data, and actually accurate data, which we can measure heights, distances, and understand what's really going on inside of the basin.
So we're very thankful to DJI now in allowing us to try out this technology in the Mirador Basin project and be able to support Richard Hansen's research for the last 47 years and having this technology help the world understand the work that Richard is doing in the Mirador Basin.
All right, that was the video case study we made together. Sorry, let me just grant you all the mic access real quick. And moving forward, I have some questions still, like regarding to the product. Maybe I can help clarify regarding to the L3 and operation with the L3 operation by using the software of DJI. So first of all, I think audience was asking whether there's a way for us to show the ground point density results by changing the overlap ratio, scanning patterns, and that kind of things, and just get a estimated amount of points per area. So this is something available in our software already. So you can use the pilot app that's our flight planning to get a rough estimation of the amount of point gets projected on the surface. It doesn't tell you the ground point density, obviously, because of the vegetation density is depending on the scenario. And one of our audiences was asking about the reception. So I know, Diego, you previously mentioned about a antenna design, right, to kind of overcome the challenge you guys are having on the transmission end, because that's a lot of area you're covering, and when the drone flies away, you have a challenge maintaining that transmission. So we currently support the drone relay solution now. So that means you can have a drone system as a relay. It's basically a flying relay. It might help you further to explore that solution as an alternative, just to have a solution out there for explore rather than something. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was going to say it's a great solution. The relay, it's just incredible because making that antenna was not just expensive, but it's really hard to carry on in the jungle. Whereas the relay is just another drone. It could be a smaller enterprise drone up on a tether, and it can be all day there relaying the drones that are scanning out miles away, tenths of miles away. So I think it's a great solution, and we're really looking forward to put it to the test in El Mirador soon.
Great. Well, looks like that's all the questions from what I can see. Well, if you have further questions, please feel free to reach out and let us know what else you think about the solution overall. And later on, we're going to have the video uploaded to our DJI Academy channel. So make sure to go to YouTube and subscribe DJI Academy. And I will see you all in the next webinar. And thank you all, Garrett, Dr. Hansen, Diego, Edwin, for joining in to today's webinar.
You're welcome, and hope to see the white paper soon, Diego.
Yes, we'll be published within this week. And also encourage everyone to look up the last webinar, the white paper, and read if you're interested in more of the LiDARs in Mirador, read the article Cambridge published in Missouri.
We had a little reverberation there, Diego, but we appreciate DJI. We appreciate Dell for their interest. Thank you for helping change the world. And this is an information that will allow us to understand humanity, understand the processes of complexity, understand the dynamics, and understand what we can do that's wrong in our government and in our societies that has an impact. We appreciate this technology. We understand how important it is, and we thank you all for this kind of support.
Thank you all.
Thank you
And
all.
see you next.
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Diego.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Del.
everyone.